So this is part 2 of the Aries lesson. Now, last video, I laid out a great deal of information on the elements and how they move through us. But I wanted to go into more detail. See, we were talking about how Aries in the chart gives us a quality in our personality which others may find to be tenacious, aggressive, dominant or domineering, assertive, very straightforward, with the ability to affect the people around us or to set things in motion. But the question of free will often arises on the subject of astrology. It's like, are we just living out, acting out according to the movement of the luminaries? The planets are moving, and the frequencies and the energies they generate as they pass each other and their energy signatures merge, they change things. And we understand what's happening on Earth by the way we interpret the exchange of their energies, the luminaries, and how pressure is exchanged between them. So in a sense, yeah, it's like we are just playing out what they're doing up in the heavens. There's a scripture. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. It's a reference to the planets. And just because, here's another clue to understanding the Bible. See, whenever it mentions the word nations, it's not only referring to the nations of the world, but also to the collective body of the Zodiac, me, you, and everyone else, and to your single form, which is a collective body of cells playing out a living Zodiac within you, through sometimes literal and symbolic elemental forces. Remember, as above, so below. So the question is, are we just doing what the planets want us to do? Are we just acting them out? Yeah, in a sense, we are. But we're also giving definition to their will. We have free will to define what it is they're trying to do. So we can take a high road or a low road to create their will on the earth. Like if someone gave you and a Pisces each a loan to buy whatever type of car you wanted, you as an Aries, you'll most likely buy a car that projects your personality. As fire is projective, the car may be imposing, big, loud, fast, gas guzzler, with all the trimmings, fire on it and whatnot, loud music wherever you go. There might be spikes somewhere, or an aggressive bobblehead. You might be driving a drop top, sporting dark colors or reds with a license plate that reads, "Smoke you." These people may be prone to road rage, aggressive driving tactics. But the Pisces, on the other hand, may buy a nice, quaint blue car of moderate speed with an average sound system. May have flower decorations inside. It smells nice. You may have pictures of a significant other or friends inside the car. Things that make you nostalgic. A collection of mood music, or religious music, trappings of their spiritual beliefs. Their inner world, because Pisces is water. It's a sign of spirituality and the subconscious. It's the sign of the reflective inner world of emotions. Pisces, they tend to be more low-key, more observant of the actions of a verbal assailing, or more passive, as they're usually processing feelings, emotions that they pick up through psychic means, or even through direct encounters with other people. Point is, Pisces, they're more emotional and they're more receptive, being literally on the other end, despite their being right behind Aries in the Zodiac. They are still, in a sense, on the other end of the spectrum. And when you study the Zodiac, you learn how the wheel may move in one direction or another. But the point I'm trying to make is that, the elements hold qualities which we archetypally associate with them. Fire does more than burn. It starts arguments. It finishes them decisively. It acts and never sits idle unless there's no fuel for it. It initiates. It causes impact. It wants to do something. It is vibration, force, and the essence of something potent. Comets fall and unleash the power of Aries with an impact. Explosion. Your coffee maker can be said to be utilizing the power of Aries, or the archetype, when you hit the button to begin warming it. The idea is that there's a pressure being generated to change something, right in front of you or in the world, with intended or at least an estimated outcome. Even your cells utilize the force of Aries when they go to war with other cells, or even when they move. When you start your car and hit the ignition or the gas, that's Aries. When the sun breaks over the horizon, that's Aries. When you initiate a conversation, you do so with the power of Aries. Despite whether you are screaming, or speaking softly, you're speaking your will into creation. So the very act of utilizing available resources, even if it's another person, as a vessel to carry out your will, or to hear your words, you're doing so through the archetype of Aries. So, utilizing any available resources, summoning the power to do anything is essentially Aries. But fire is archetypal, and it'll move through any medium receptive to its pattern. So if the Pisces, for instance, gets cut off in traffic and has a moon in Aries, it may trigger a violent reaction. A person who's normally very, very kind, soft-spoken, may be triggered. And now you got yelling and screaming, but then the Pisces may drive off, and then when they calm down, they're crying, they're hurt, and they're upset they had to go there, The moon is the body that tends to relate more to the reflective, inner aspect of the mind, as this is what the light is doing through the moon. When it receives the power of the sun, it reflects its light and oscillates around the earth to move the heat and pressure around, stabilize things, absorbs the energy of the sun and reflects that light back, so that the things of darkness, the things of the inner world can take place, the things outside of the realm of awareness, the things that require us sometimes even to remain in a state of unawareness, for manifestation to occur. Ergo, the observer effect. So the moon essentially creates an evenness between the outer world of, interaction between people and things, the physical world, and the inner world of introspection. The sun, on the other hand, usually governs the light of consciousness and awareness, as this is what the light is doing through it. The sun rises and sets and it repeats, so too does consciousness. Consciousness rises and falls and causes change in the world and within us at different times. Causes a change in our mindset, which also breaks down to the routines and the patterns we set for ourselves during the phases of the day. The sun is similar to your field of awareness and influence as you engage the world, because the photons are using it to express the awareness of what needs to be done, changed, or what needs to evolve, be moved forward, basically. It's the primary motivating force in this system, as your ego consciousness is the primary motivating force of your person. Well, there's far more to the sun and moon and the other luminaries, but I'll cover those in other lessons. But more on fire. When there's an abundance of any element, it tends to trigger reaction in its geometric equivalent in time-space. It's called resonance. Things resonate with their own quality. And human consciousness is a powerful receiver of signals in the airwaves. The elements carry an electrical quality that allows them to transcend our definition of what something is doing, because definition can only be given to something that is being detected by the senses or the imagination. So when we see action, we are witnessing Aries essentially create something. Or when we're considering action, we're summoning our will by way of Aries. And we'll use the will to set things in motion to accomplish the task. All this is Aries. Sometimes it's more subtle, like music can be considered a form of fire. It can also bestow fire. Its melody may reflect a passive theme, but, if it makes you dance, it's essentially lighting a fire within you. It causes you to dance or feel uplifted. This is Aries. The dancing would equate to probably Taurus, which is form, beauty, torsion. It's aesthetically pleasing in its qualities. It's a display of aesthetically pleasing qualities. So the dance itself actually may be considered a product of Taurus, but what's motivating you to dance is, for the most part, Aries. The dancing, the desire, or the will to dance may be enhanced depending on the water affinity of your natal chart or your Venus placement, because Venus is essentially beauty, symmetry, and it creates a magnetic quality within us. And water is receptive and moves with music more easily. So we take the qualities of our elements based on the position of the luminaries when we're born, and over time as we grow, we become more pure expressions of the energetic pattern. So let's say, for example, if a person has a sun in Aries, as the sun correlates to action, conscious awareness, or directed focus, or being the center of attention, having the sun in Aries is an abundance of projective or nervous force behind the desire to do something, or show up, show out, turn up, or act out. The sun here compels the qualities of Aries as a default demeanor. It'll begin usually very early on in childhood. It's usually ascribed to the sun, to the masculine influence in your life as you grow up. So there'd be an association, a strong association with the father or father figure, or strong personality, a person who took on that role and made decisions. They took no crap from people. It might have been a sibling, for instance. This person would have valued strength, valor, or confidence when facing opposition, projecting the personality without shame or guilt. Like, they're the ones that are supposed to be here, and you're the one taking up space. Consider fire. It takes what it wants, and it changes things, leaving whatever is left behind for the other elements, right? These are qualities which would have prevailed in the home as the child was growing. So there would have been an association with very masculine qualities related to their conditioning to acquire what they want, as desire is a quality that is associated with Aries, just as desire is a quality associated with fire. These people may grow to be those who get what they want, and over time they become more and more like the potential for fire they carry, which could either be a really good thing or it could be a very bad thing. Because each archetype has a higher or a lower vibrational expression of its energy. Higher vibrational expressions of an archetype usually, it's a person who considers the impact of their actions, or they operate with a perspective that's well thought out, or based on situational awareness. Usually their actions are rooted in love. They hold a higher perspective. There's usually a mutual benefit in mind. The idea is that it serves more than the self. It serves the collective. Sometimes serving the self is serving the collective, though, like a king or a diplomat, considering they're of honest yoke. They'll serve the people, for instance, even as it's perceived that they're the ones being served. The people are serving the throne. But this is why all kings in the tarot are marked by the number 10, which represents a higher tier or order of the value of 1 in numerology. If 1 is the beginning in a toroidal pattern of counting, 9 represents the limit of that cycle of growth. 10 represents a new beginning, or the beginning of a higher cycle, marking the progress of 1 to 9 again, through 10 to 19, and so forth. The tarot card, the Emperor, represents the archetype of Aries, and it's considered major arcana. Major arcana usually represents direct intervention by the spirit, or energy that's moving, from macrocosm to microcosm, or an overwhelming force that may be karmic or fated, or when the source permits an action by another person as a test of your integrity. As we're all subject to challenge, it's permitted, it's required for growth. The Emperor card represents power, structure, stability, paternity, rationality, rules, and archetypal fatherly qualities, or having an abundance of force, or even a monopoly on power. So as Aries is the ego, those who are strongly tied to Aries through, their many aspects and their planets, they usually have the duty, well, not usually, but they do. They have the duty within the collective to express a healthy love of self and the ego. That is, they're encouraged by those of higher wisdom to ponder on the self and the ego, to learn temperance and the power under, their own control, the ability to influence things and to set events in motion. Very emperor-like qualities, because serving the self from a philosophical perspective, they are, by proximity, serving the collective. They're progressing the evolution of the archetype Aries within themselves and unconsciously for the collective. They're programmed to respond to, receive, and transmute the energy signatures of Aries and of fire more than others. So they have this responsibility. Now, your planetary and elemental affinity are based on the positions of the planets when you're born. So like their strength is determined by a number of factors. So chiefly like a planet in the natal chart sitting in their exalted sign may cause the planet to express itself through the person more fluently. Now, having enough exalted planets of the same element, or enough planets in the same house, may give you a preponderance of the elemental qualities of that house, or of those planets, if they share the same element. So like a strong affinity for the energies of Aries would also be a strong association with the planet Mars, as Mars is exalted in Aries, which means the planet Mars has a specific energetic signature that finds the frequencies of the constellation Aries best suited for its expression. And as the science grows, it may reveal some interesting clues as to the formation of the planet Mars, as it receives and broadcasts the energy signature of the constellation Aries. But being positioned in Aries gives Mars an increased charge that usually causes it to show more instinctively in the actions of people. It's like a default thing. It's a default thing in their demeanor. It's just there's a greater chance that they are more likely to show, what they're made of. If Mars is in Aries in the sky, it might cause an outbreak of violent altercations between people. You'll hear about gunshots, more violence. People will be more likely to settle disputes by a show of force. You may hear about terrorism, burning buildings, saber rattling, wars and rumors of war, even explosions due to natural causes. The energy will seek a path of least resistance as its outlet, wherever the circumstances can be found, in one place. The elements as they gather, if they can be found in one place and there is room for fire to come in within that quadruplicity, or if there is room or vacuum for fire, fire will come in. Aries will come in. You see, wherever the circumstances can be found in reality or in the imagination for the archetype to enter this world through, it will seek that path. Mars in the natal chart typically describes our proclivity to behave a certain way when we're motivated to acquire something we want. So it would describe how a person may be best suited to achieve their goals. My Mars, for instance, in the sign of Virgo, third house, which is Gemini, suggests that I may be more likely to settle things by speaking. I make war and peace with speech. And in Virgo, I'm service-oriented. That's what I do. It gives me the ability to acquire skills that may make me better suited for service. And it suggests that I accomplish work by speaking, or I'm best suited to accomplish work by speaking. It describes the default modus operandi, how we respond to challenge or attract the attention of others, or how we'll best impact the world around us. But this is the end of part 2. I mentioned I'd go into the, intentional manifestation in this section, but there's so much to cover, and I'm realizing the depth of this work because it's, it ties together so many other occult disciplines, and I don't like to leave room for the serious student. But to give a prelude, manifestation is basically the idea of utilizing, available conditions, prima materia, which again may be matter at rest, or symbolic, an idea that hasn't been given form. But it would be the creation of an idea and then the giving it form and function, or birthing it into the world. But it's the idea of using the will to bring things about by way of circumstance, coincidence sometimes. If people who are witnessing magic, they see things that make sense to them because, through geometry does the photon accomplish its will, and geometry is just the logic of the universe. So we see things sometimes that are seemingly, they're mathematically accurate. They make sense to us. They're logical because, nothing, you can witness a miracle, but you didn't realize all the other things happening and, behind the scenes that may have contributed to that miracle. This is how magic creates things, how manifestation, how you can use it to, accomplish some really interesting things. Programming matter with instructions. It creates a vacuum for the elements to fill in the void through a transference of spiritual pressure. It'll summon an archetypal fire, basically, which will move through minds, objects, situations to take root and shape in reality. But again, it's an extremely complicated lesson, and it may be reserved for the mystery school, so I haven't really decided yet if I'm going to tackle it in a part 3. I have to ponder on it because I have to really consider the ramifications of making some information available to those who are uninitiated, by their lower vibration or their intentions. They may use this power to bring harm to people. If they haven't given the proper energetic exchange to devoting their time, to learning these lessons and to learning the deeper mysteries of energy, they may become very irresponsible with that power. And I could be karmically held responsible for it. And powerful it is, the power of manifestation. If not careful, you can bring a force into this world and give it an elemental intelligence that you haven't set the proper parameters for, and you'll be lucky if you don't burn your house down or kill someone, or cause a lasting grief that either plays itself out in time or extends into the next life as karma. And, numbers, for instance, even the numerological equivalent of your home address actually holds a power. Colors, patterns, the cyclical setting of intention can cause a rhythm or vibration, creating an energetic or like a geometric pattern in space-time. It'll influence the affinity of fire, or the element of fire in that area. Things of fire may come out more quickly. Something may get set on fire faster. People may, they may throw fisticuffs more quickly. Your car might explode, if there's a charge of fire in that area. It's just interesting. Energy, the way it actually moves. There's a whole science to it we haven't really discovered because we're just really discovering, quantum superposition and resonance and whatnot, but there's still a lot really to cover, so I'm most likely going to end up doing a part 3 anyway, especially to divulge what I speculate about atomic rhythm and how Aries moving through Taurus is like a projective, combustive energy related to eruption, emergence, ignition, disruption, explosion. But energy, in reverse, it'll move through Pisces, for instance, from Aries to Pisces, and you'll end up with like a vortex and energy patterns related to, for example, condensation, magnetism. You have torsion, you see, tornado. There may be a way to achieve fission through this. And again, like I said, it's just purely speculation, but it's the idea of the fusion of water and fire. And there's a deeper secret to the story of Chrysomelos, the ram from Jason and the Golden Fleece. I intend to decode it, but there are deeper mysteries about the wheel of Ezekiel related to the manipulation of energy. And these things were heavily spoken of by Thoth and Hermes and Enoch, actually. So again, I may end up doing a part 3. There's a lot that I need to learn about the science, especially of fission, if I'm going to create or make a convincing statement about it. Because there's so much that we really need to learn or relearn about energy through the Zodiac. And I'm grateful that I happen to be one of the first to really think on this subject. But tell me what you think. Leave comments below. I have a Facebook group called Arcana of the Most High. You can look me up on Facebook. My last name's Villanova. Feel free to look me up. Send me a Facebook friend request. I'm a pretty friendly person. I don't have many friends because most of my friends they tend to be. Again, I don't have many friends, but those who I would consider friends would be people who are probably, higher thinkers, spiritually inclined, or just, well-rounded individuals. It's difficult to find people who are interested in this sort of material. You tend to talk about it. You see someone's eyes glaze over. They start yawning. I know I have a voice that might put people to sleep, but it's really when you have an interest or hunger for this sort of information, it calls to you, and you really don't need stimulus. You don't need stimulation other than the actual information. You have a hunger for it and a desire to know. So I recall watching countless hours of documentaries on subjects when I was first waking up. Quote, waking up, unquote. I just spend hours and hours and hours on these documentaries, just learning everything I could and absorbing it all, listening through countless hours of people droning on through. And back in those days, actually, a lot of the videos were of extremely low quality. I know a lot of people here remember that. It was back in the days of like Zeitgeist, and that was the highest quality produced. But then you had some other productions, and it was just basically a guy standing in front of a projector and just talking. And you really you have to have a deep appreciation for this sort of information, to sit through a lecture and to just listen to someone with a voice who really doesn't say that they're trying to entertain you. They may toss an occasional joke in here or there, but the focus really isn't to entertain you. It's to deliver the information. That's what I intend to do. So I'm just a messenger, and again, as I always mention, I'm no expert. There's a lot that I need to learn still, especially to explain this stuff scientifically. I mean, my mindset tends to be on the occult and on the, the more spiritual, mumbo jumbo side of things, which the spiritually inclined tend to understand, from a position of intuition. A lot of this stuff you understand through your intuition. So to intellectualize it or to quantify it in a way for the intellectual mind, or the mind who's linear and requires proof and empirical data to digest something, it's quite a task to translate this sort of information for that type of individual. But I'm blessed to have the gift of speech, and to a degree, and the sight to see complicated things in my mind and to explain them in a way that sometimes people get. But again, if you have any feedback for me, any comments, anything you like, anything you don't, be nice. But please post below. Thank you. Oh, and subscribe, please.